Good afternoon, and thank you for staying back. Post-lunch sessions are usually difficult ones, and I admire everyone who's stayed back post-lunch for another round of learning. In our lives, all of us have a person or usually a group of people who are like the bhai, the quintessential dawns in our lives, who are Mr. Fix-Its, who will solve all problems. And you go to that person for any problem in that particular area. Manju Arif is one such Miss Fix-It for anything and everything to do with inclusive education in our country, in the scope of school education. And I think I've heard her a couple of times over some TED Talks and other conferences, and I'm sure you will be enriched after listening to what she has to say about her journey as an educator, especially in the realm of inclusive education. So welcome to the show. She is somebody who anybody who has any challenges with inclusive education will go to, and she will do anything that is humanly possible to help that child reach his or her true potential. And that is who Manju Arif is. She believes that every child can learn, and she's shown it to us through her school at DPS North Bangalore. Thank you so much for coming all the way from Bangalore.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for making me feel like a dawn. I never thought 5 foot 0 inches could feel that stature. But for me, coming here is another platform to share what every teacher in the country feels. And before we set forward, we'll do some technology. I want you all to take up your mobiles and type Google Ngram. Just go to Google and type Ngram. And then when it comes up on that window, put socio-emotional learning. And then we'll come back to see what we've learned. The topic given to us is the human advantage. And we've been hearing about AI and machine learning and the 21st century and the fourth industrial age and a lot of it. And then where is the human being? And I have a couple of statistics for you. Again, while you're doing this, you'll have to open another window if you can and Google this fantastic professor from the Yale Child Development Center. Her name is Christiana Cipriano. And she did something, and I'm going to give you numbers because it's the age of metrics. And it still says something phenomenal about socio-emotional learning. They took a sample of about 35,000 students across the world, across continents, across countries. And they put them through a socio-emotional learning program. And the numbers say that students who went through this program for 1 whole year in a structured manner, as was designed by Yale, there was an 8.2% increase in academic learning outcomes. The next question people will say, tell me about literacy and numeracy. Asar just spoken about it, Educate Girls has spoken about it, the Secretary, Government of India has spoken about it. What about literacy and numeracy? Literacy saw a 6.8 percentile increase, and numeracy saw 3.2. And in this cohort, 24% of students showed better, improved socio-emotional behavior. Or those incidences came down by 24%. So numbers matter. It's only when you put numbers, then you say, oh, socio-emotional learning matters. Why does it matter? How does it matter? And I'll give you this perspective from 2 parts of me. One, the biology teacher, the other, the inclusive educator. The biology teacher in me sees the brain, right? So all learning is happening there. And there are 2 parts of the brain. The amygdala, which is the place for all emotions. Happiness, anger, sadness, frustration, jealousy, whatever. And then there is the prefrontal cortex, where all the higher cognitive learning happens, right? So 2 parts of the brain, each doing their job. Now, when I am anxious, how are you all feeling today? How's everyone feeling here today? I have hands going up. Okay, Rupa ma'am and everybody shows me a thumbs up, so we're feeling good, right? So if we are feeling good, are you listening into me? Yes or no? Yes. Awesome. So when the brain is in a state to want to listen, there is attention. So emotion drives attention, and if there is attention, that drives learning. But if the child who is in my class is afraid, is scared, is hungry, is tired, has faced abuse back home or somewhere in the community, has anxiety issues, has nervousness, has a meltdown, or my child is isolated because of her or his disability, there is going to be no attention. And if there is no attention, there is no learning. So the science is very clear, very, very clear. Now I come to the inclusive educator in me who says, what is social emotional learning, or what is social emotional being? What does it mean to be somewhere? That sense of belonging. That sense of belonging comes only when there is the child, the teacher, the management is exposed to diversity. Right? There has to be different people for us to see someone is different. How does that diverse place become safe for everyone? When does it become a space for everybody to learn? When there are equitable opportunities for everyone, not equal. There are equal opportunities, but everybody has a different level of want. So do we have that equitable opportunity? If you are doing that, then you are inclusive. And when you are doing that and you become inclusive, then everybody in this room, every child in that classroom, every person in that state or city or country has a sense of belongingness. Now, all this will happen only if that organization, that place, that institution, that group is a caring, compassionate community. Right? So it can't be a single person approach. If socio-emotional learning has to be the core of learning, then it has to be a whole school approach. It has to be teamwork. It has to be a strengths-based approach. You're looking at people's strengths and not their weaknesses. You're looking at empathy and compassion and care. And that's the biggest change that the NEP did when it turned ECE to ECCE. They added the word care. And that's changed the entire perception of how we're looking at our kindergartners. So that's the special education part or the inclusive education part, that there is no inclusion, there is no special, each one of us is special. How do we make that space for everybody to see that humanness in us? I'm coming back to the 21st century skills that the World Economic Forum has been talking about for the last so many events since Davos, and we've had a mention of that as well today. So there are 21 skills. Any guesses from those 21 skills, how many of them are actually cognitive skills? Any answers from this group? And we all can use our devices. Assistive tech. Sorry? So I'm talking about cognitive in terms of scholastics, okay? Everything is at the end. I'm talking about 4 key skills. Okay. No, these are all there. So there are only 4, actually. One is literacy. The second is numeracy. The third is scientific literacy. And the fourth is ICT literacy. 2 more are in between. They talk about cultural understanding and something else, but the remaining are all socio-emotional skills. Creativity, collaboration, communication, curiosity. Initiative, perseverance, grit, resilience, whatever you might call it. problem solving, decision making. So you see, the world of tomorrow is saying that these skills matter, and they matter more than what the other 4 skills will do. And so this whole understanding that the future of this world, the workforce of this world will want our children to be strong people. And so what is socio-emotional learning? And in my school, we follow the CASTLE model, which looks at socio-emotional learning as 5 pillars. Understanding self, that's self-awareness, and self-regulation, managing myself. Social awareness, and managing relationships with others. And if these 4 are in place, then I have the ability to take reasonable, ethical decisions. So if I go back to my point 1, the brain, the amygdala is in a happy state, attention is happening, learning is happening. When I have learning happening, I'm more interested in coming to school, given all the other infrastructural, and my food is there, my midday meal is there, I have uniform to wear, and probably my parents are getting a little money, so they don't push me to work. I am going to learn, I'm not going to stop learning. Whether it's core subjects, whether it is skilling, I will do anything, but I will learn. What does that do for the country? I have a productive workforce that can work in diverse conditions and do really well. What does it mean to productivity? The economy grows. So obviously, there's a very, very clear link that socio-emotional learning is, in all aspects, the human advantage. And we are here for that, to be here.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Manju. Mrs. Arif, sorry.
You know,
in an age, and you have spoken so passionately about social emotional learning. Before you, we had Dr. Amita Ranganathan, who also spoke very passionately about, I said, what is the one thing that school leaders should focus on? And she said that if there is one thing, it should be social emotional learning. But in a world, we can all dream of a utopian world, but we do not live in utopia. In the real world, metrics, marks, data, numbers do count. Most schools in today's world, at least in our country, look at school success or measure school success through the lens of school results. They measure school success into how many students have got into the various IITs or medical schools in the country. Or they measure school success as to the number of college placements, good college placements, Ivy League placements that schools have got. In an age which is driven, in our society which is driven by metrics, how do we bring in or drive the importance of social emotional learning? We know that you've said that World Economic Forum has said that only out of the 21 skills, only 4 are cognitive based and the rest are 17 are social emotional learning skills. But despite that, it is very difficult to drive across that point. Is it because we are measuring things which are easy to measure and shying away from not measuring things which are difficult to measure?
Sure. So we are sitting here talking about socio-emotional learning, which we didn't. And therefore, that Ngram, did you find out when that word really popped up in our usage? It's somewhere only, you find SEL coming up only somewhere in the late 90s, and then it peaked, because suddenly there was an understanding that this is important. Now, like I said earlier, talking about socio-emotional learning has to be a mindset. It has to be a mindset change. That we keep talking about the holistic child, but we only see the academic child. Where do we see the emotional needs of the child, the social needs of the child, the psychological needs of the child, the spiritual needs of the child? We're not looking at it, because it was never considered, and I think Dr. Dinesh spoke, we never acknowledged the innate wisdom of mankind that is there in a child. I mean, it's in our genes. There is certain intelligence there, innate intelligence. And we say a child comes to us empty and we fill the child with everything as teachers. Sorry, the times have changed and we are not the source of information at all. So there is this greater understanding that there is more to a child. And I think the talk about the 3 children who jumped off the building, and we see it any school that says that I've never had a child with mental health issues is lying. Right? When principals say कि हमारे स्कूल में तो ऐसे बच्चे हैं ही नहीं, वो झूठ है. हर किसी के घर में है, हर किसी के स्कूल में है, सोसाइटी में है ना? So what do we do? What do we do? I mean, why are we not looking at it? Because we were not equipped to understand SEL. We were not equipped to have tools to measure SEL as well. We still, most of us do not know. I spoke about the Castle model. There is something, there is the International Socio-Emotional Learning Assessment. I think it's called ISELA. And then there's ESSA. There are a lot of tools coming up, but I think it is at individual levels that people are finding out and doing some work. But organizations like NIMHANS, Jitendra Nagpal in Delhi, and a lot of other institutions are working on socio-emotional learning. We did a program which was app-based for our teachers. How do I equip a teacher to find out what the social emotional levels are if she herself doesn't know what her SELs are, right? So we did an assessment that was based, app-based one, and we took it up. But yes, ma'am, like you said, there aren't enough tools. But should there be tools, I think there would be more people interested in doing that at a larger scale.
Thank you. Given your long journey as a classroom teacher and then as a national award-winning principal, how do you lead inclusion in your school? How do you make sure that inclusion is a reality? And what is it that is a good indicator that there is inclusion happening in your school? Which is something that all of us need to learn from you.
Okay, to that question, I'll have to go back to my numbers again. We are a school with about 7,000 children, and we have about 750 students with special needs. Is that normal? Yes, it is normal. 1 in 7 children, 1 in 7 adults has disability of some kind or the other. In the continuum of life, we all are disabled at some time or the other, when you're an infant or when you're 90 years old. But we have children across the visible spectrum of disorders that you can see, and so you can remedify, and children whom you cannot see, who look visibly normal but have issues. And these, when we were younger, were labeled as lazy, naughty, or inattentive, or whatever. But today we know that there's not a single child who doesn't want to learn. And if there is no learning happening, there's a barrier. How do we become inclusive? Because you believe that every child should be in the classroom, not tied away in some corner of the house, not seen by anyone other than the parents. Every child needs to be seen, heard, felt. Every child needs a voice to express. Right? So we believe in that. So schooling for us, or education for us, we had a distinction this morning, is in believing that school is a social construct, first. If a child comes to school and is coming there every day excited that this is my place, these are my friends, these are the trusted adults that I live with, learning will happen. Lots of learning will happen. Like Dr. Dinesh said, then there will be collaboration, there will be project-based learning, there will be a strengths-based approach, there would be looking at each other's strengths. You can talk well, so you present. I'm good at collecting data, so I will do the research work, someone else will write. And that's project. Then transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary work will happen. And so for us, that is the whole construct. And the second is engage with the parent unconditionally. The parent is the first teacher. They've seen their child, they know what's missing. They might be in denial, but that's natural. Right? And the cycle of denial might vary from person to person. For someone, it might be just a few months saying, I've known that my child has ASD. For another parent, it might take 10 years. But this understanding and trust that the parent puts in us should make the parent our first teacher and say, can we learn together? We generally keep parents away because we think we are vulnerable. But I think for us, those are the two things that work. Embrace the child, love the child as you would love your own. Get the parent in, because nobody can help you more than a parent.
Thank you. We all know that the NEP mandates almost 50 hours of continuous professional development for all teachers. And we also realize that the 50 hours of CPD that NEP mandates is often a tick box, a checkbox kind of an activity that many schools fulfill. कि ठीक है करना है तो कर लेते, but what is the real learning that teachers go through? So, and within CPD, if the minute we say that there is a module or a workshop on inclusive practices, there are very few takers for it, because the mindset is that inclusive education should be done by special educators. Inclusive education is not the domain of main classroom teachers, because we shy away from that area. How would you want school leaders sitting in this room to change that mindset, to make sure that every teacher becomes a special educator?
So the way I'd like to do is every principal here first must engage in a course on special ed and inclusion. It starts with you. Leadership, inclusion or social-emotional learning is leadership driven. When the principal was a teacher, that teacher wanted the best for all her or his learners. They wanted all children to learn. And when we didn't have these words, our teachers did that for us. They knew who was struggling in class, and they would go walk that extra mile. But somewhere when we come into leadership, that reality fades, and then you have the pressures of showing to your board the results. But I think it starts with leadership, that you start training, and then you create a culture saying, whether it's in your admission policy, you put it bold up there. Every child is welcome here if I have the seats, right? Every good school should be an NIO school. We've been hearing people talk about it. And I just wanted to say that we run an NIS and we don't charge a penny, because NIS is non-formal flexible education. Your children don't have to be in class every day. And the board hardly charges anything. So bring NIS, because that's a great leveler. Use your teachers. So when you are yourself engaged in it, your teachers are going to say, and then make it a group activity. It's not in isolation. If there's an inclusive workshop, let the whole school learn together. Put everybody together. And then have your deliberations and your discussions and your perspectives, and ask an English teacher, how can you bring inclusion? And it can't be a subject, right? Like value ed, you can't have a period. Even value ed should not have, social emotional learning should not have. It should be integrated everywhere. So in your classrooms, in your PE field, in your events, in your assemblies, we should see inclusion everywhere, because that's how it is meant to be. And I think when teachers see this as a whole school effort, and not me, I'm being singled out, but we are learning as a team. And I would go one step ahead, which is what we did. We took our support staff as well. We took our drivers, our attenders, our housekeeping staff, our canteen staff, to understand what allergies could be for a child. And so are we going to be mindful of what we are cooking in the kitchen and putting up that this is what we're eating? Yes, ma'am, sorry.
One last question before we go away, because we're running out of time. I want you to share the story of your student in school. And I don't think we should let you go away without sharing that story.
Sure. Thank you. The story is of a young man called Karan Veeranand. Karan was diagnosed with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy when he was pretty young, around 2. It's an X-linked genetic disorder. That means it comes from his mother. And when he came to school at 5, he was playing. In kindergarten at 4, he was playing. He loved cricket, and he would jump around. And suddenly, his muscles started giving away, so he could walk, and he couldn't play. And then it came on to a stage that he couldn't climb stairs. And so his classroom was fixed on the ground floor, while all other classes would go up. His section and his group of friends would stay. And then he came to me one day, and this was way before the mandate came up on ramps and lifts in schools. And he said, I don't want this for me, and I don't want this for my friends. We want to be with all the other sections. And like someone said, DPSs have 16 and 17 sections per grade. And so he said, we want to be with them. So I said, what can we do for you? He said, you can give me ramps and lifts. And so that summer vacation, ramps were built into the building. And every new building that came up later had ramps and lifts. And then the doctor said he has to sit on a wheelchair. And he said, I'm not ready. I still want to walk. But I can't walk without assistance, and I don't want anyone to hold my hand. So I said, again, what can I do for you? And he said, give me railings on the wall. And we put railings on the wall, and Karan could move around buildings. And then he said, I want accessible toilets because now I'm on a wheelchair and I need to, my mother shouldn't be coming and picking me up and taking me to the washroom. And so we made accessible toilets. Our time's up, but you must hear the end of the story. So Karan then went on to do 10th with a CGPA 10 in the board examinations. And he comes up and tells me, I want to do science. And his mother says, no, you can't do science. How will you do the practicals? You're half the day out of school. And he said, I can. And so we moved our physics and chemistry labs to accommodate his wheelchair. And in grade 12, he says, I need to be head boy. I want to apply for the post of the head boy. And again, his parents said, no, you are undergoing treatment and you can't do that. He incidentally taught genetics with me. He was my co-teacher for the module on genetics. I taught ancient genetics, and that is Mendel and the others, and the presence of genetics. He taught the future of genetics because his parents were running a lab for his treatment. And he said, I'm going to be head boy. I don't need anybody's help. On some of the parameters, I will score a 0, sports and others. But in others, I will score. And he scored, and he was eligible. He came and gave his speech. There was a standing ovation. We have never had a standing ovation for any kid before or after. Because what he said touched lives. On the day of the graduation, I've narrated the story a million times and I still have goosebumps. I walk into the hall, into the area, and there is a ramp that's come up overnight. Our whole idea was to have the investiture on the ground, but a ramp comes up right here, and Karan is wheeled onto the stage by his friends. The previous day, something more magical happened. The other 2 boys who are contending for the post of the head boy come into my office and say that we are not standing for the head boy's post. And I said, sympathy? They said, no, history. History. They said, for the first time in the world, a boy on wheelchair is going to be the head boy of a school. We want to be a part of that history. We don't want to be people who didn't let that happen. Nobody taught them that, right? The last and the icing on the cake is they come up the ramp, the performance happens, everything happens, and the oath taking happens again. And we practiced it for the last 1 week, and suddenly everybody goes on their knees. All the other students in the prefectorial board kneel down to be at the level of Karan, and they take the oath for the prefect team. Nothing was taught. Nothing was taught. So the reason I'm saying this, and thank you for bringing this, is children are innately empathetic. There is something in them that sees the goodness and strengths in others. Where do we lose it? And if schools can become those spaces where those feelings are nurtured and cared and amplified, we're going to have a better world.
Thank you so much for your inspirational words. I think the applause has said it all. Thank you very much. And I'm sure there is a lot of learning that each one of us will take away from Mrs. Manju Arif's talk. Thank you so much.